Today, we're going to talk about how to create a second brain inside of Notion. A second brain is essentially just a method of organizing your life digitally. And in this case, we're going to do it inside of Notion. So the second brain method was coined by Tiago Forte, and I'm going to leave links down below to learn more about this method. What this method is in a nutshell is we're going to create a system for taking notes or capturing information inside of a digital notebook and then organizing or filtering those notes into different buckets of your life. First, let's just take a look at how the second brain works in a graph. A second brain system has a few different sections. So we're going to start with something like a funnel, where at the top of the funnel, we're going to have capture. And in the capture database, we're going to capture information. One piece of information could be manual notes. Another one could be web clippings, like web articles or maybe tweets. And a third type of capture may be an imported file, like a PDF file. Okay, so once we've captured this information, we're going to organize it into 4 different bins. And this is something called the para system. One bin could be projects. The next bin, areas. The third is resources, and the fourth is archive. So in each one of these blocks, this with the connection to a captured note to projects, we are using notes in an actionable way. If your note is not connected to a project, it may be connected to an area in your life. This isn't going to be broad categories, but rather actionable projects that do not have an end date. So something like renovations on a home or learning a new language is something that's going to be ongoing areas in your life. Now the third one here, resource, this is if your captured information doesn't fall within projects or area. We're going to just automatically put it into the resource category. The fourth is going to be archive. So archive is essentially whenever you, of course, archive a note, but it's also in this system going to be where we're storing archived projects and areas. We are creating a notebook to capture information and then organizing that information into projects, areas, resources, and archive. Now, the last bit of this dashboard, we're going to create a section for sharing. So there are 2 places to share information from. One is a project you want to share. For example, if you want to, of course, launch a newsletter, that is something you're going to launch publicly. So there's going to be a publish date. You could also share notes. So this is basically what it's going to look like. It looks a little crazy with all of these arrows, but I just wanted to show you how we're going to build this and what parts of this system go where. So let's just get right into it. In this follow along page, you're going to have 4 different sections or toggles that are just going to help you follow along with the video. Each one of these is a new chapter in the video, and we're going to create different databases here, right? So in each one of these databases, like capture at the top of the funnel, I do have a list of properties that I'm creating. Or if you just want to know what each one of these properties does, if you're just using this template straight out, you can utilize this page. Okay, so let's create the first database, which is going to be capture, by going to the body of the page and just going /page. And we're just going to create a new page here. And we're going to call it capture. And I'm going to go down to add new and go to table. From here, I'm just going to go to new database. The first thing I would do is maybe give this an icon via this button here. And maybe I can give it the icon a dashed circle. No rhyme or reason for this, but I just like how it looks. Now in this first database view, you can add a new database view via this plus button. The one we're currently in, I'm just going to click it, go to rename, and this should bring up the database menu, which you can also access via this button next to new. I'm going to rename this to active. This is going to be all of our active notes. I can also change the icon of each one of the database views via this icon button. Maybe I'll give it the sun icon. Okay, so now we're going to add a few different properties. And we have a default property already given to us called tags. We're actually going to keep that. And I'm going to add a new property via this button here. And I'm going to select the type via this type menu, select. We're just going to rename it type. This is going to give us a drop-down menu of options to categorize each page in the database. And we can add our options in this drop-down menu via this menu here. Or if I click away, I can just go to the cell underneath this column. A few options. The first is going to be a note. Might be adding just a manual typed out note directly into Notion. So if you want to change the color of each option, you can just go to the menu of each option and change the color there. Another option may be a web clip. And I'm just typing it out and pressing enter. Now, a web clip could be an article from the web, but maybe I want to separate my articles from tweets. So I'm going to add another option called tweet. And the last type of captured note is going to be a file. Now, a file could be something like a PDF you want to summarize, or any other form of media like an image or a video. Let's create the next one. I can actually adjust the width of each one and drag it around the table. The next one's going to be called created time. This is going to give us a timestamp. This is an automatic property, meaning you do not have to manually change it. I can also change the date format of this date here. And actually within this view, I don't really need to see this. So I'm just going to click the header and go to hide in view. If I go to open up this note, you'll see created time here, but just not in the database view. Speaking of opening up notes, there are different ways you can visualize doing that. So by going to the database menu and going to layout, I can choose open pages in side peek, like you just saw, or center peek. Personally, I prefer center peek. Now the next is going to be a property for source or URL. This is important for web clippings. The next one for files, we'll need something like a files and media property to upload files to. And you can upload more than one file here if you'd like. I'm going to name it attachments. And the last two properties are going to be checkboxes. Checkbox type, and the first one's going to be called share. So like I said in the beginning of the video, there's going to be a share section where we can accumulate all of the notes or projects we're sharing to the public. Now what you can do with properties, just like you can with database views, you can change the icon. So I may change the icon here to a share icon. And with checkboxes, I can actually narrow the width all the way to the icon. I'm going to create one more property that is a checkbox and also call this one archive. I'm also going to change the icon to an archived box and do the same thing. Okay, great. So let's add some examples of notes. The first one is how to make a cookbook. And maybe we got this information from a tweet. And the tags might be cooking and writing. And then the source would be where this tweet came from. So we are going to go over how to capture web clippings with an extension. So you won't have to do this manually. We can also determine if we want to share this information or archive it. Okay, so the next one may be something like recipe ideas for a cookbook. And this could be just a regular handwritten note for cooking and brainstorming. Another one can be tips for learning Spanish. This may also just be a note, and we can create more tags here for maybe languages and Spanish. So when it comes to tagging, I recommend keeping it short and simple. Try to keep it between 1 and 3 tags per note. And maybe the last one is newsletter content ideas. And maybe we're grabbing this from a file, maybe a PDF file. Can give this a tag as well, maybe newsletter, marketing. And let's say this is archived. And maybe tips for learning Spanish is something I want to share. So now that we have some examples here, let's talk about how we can filter this database view to show only active information. So firstly, what I want to do is go to the database menu. And I kind of want to get rid of these vertical lines in the table because I don't think they look very nice. I can do that by going to layout and just hiding those vertical lines. Next, what I want to do is create a filter. And that's by going here to filter and just making sure that the archive checkbox property here, if I click on it, is unchecked. Now, if I go back, I also want to add a sort. I want to sort this by created time. Now, lastly, what I want to do is I'm thinking of the future. So I'm thinking I'm going to capture a lot of notes. What I want to do is be able to group these notes so I can access them a little bit easier. And I'm going to group all of my notes by created time. And specifically, I want to see date by month, which is something I prefer to group date by. And if I go to hide empty groups, I will now see May 2023. So we'll be able to access active notes by the time and the date that they've been created. Okay, great. Now that we have our active section, I actually just want to create an archived database view that looks the exact same. So I'm going to go to active here, click on the title, and choose this duplicate option, which is super helpful. And I'm just going to rename this to archived and maybe change this icon from a sun to a moon. And all I'm going to do is change the filter. I'm going to change the filter from archive unchecked to archive checked. So we can just stop here if we want to, or if you want to create even more views, maybe for each type of note, that might be useful. So what I'm going to do is again go to active, duplicate, maybe create a view where I can view all of my notes and change this icon maybe to a writing icon. And I'm just going to make sure that this filter has another filter in addition to archive being unchecked. So this is just going to be active notes, where the type is also a note. And what you can do here, and probably what I would do, is get rid of this grouping, but that's up to you. You can do that by just going to the database menu, going back to that group, and we're just going to get rid of grouped by created time, and just choose none instead. So now we have our notes, all of our active captures, and archived. Now another view I think is really helpful is a view to just view all archived and active notes in a calendar view. So we're going to create another view here and go to calendar. And I'm going to name it all. In calendar, we can actually show either as a month calendar or a week. In this case, I'm going to show as a week. Press done. And I'm not going to have any filters here. I'm just going to sort by created time. And in properties, I do also want to see the type. Now let's click away. If I select this today button, it should get me to this current week. Now there's another way we can visualize all of our captured notes. We can duplicate active again. And I'm going to rename this by tag. So we're going to visualize all of our notes by tags specifically. And I can change this icon again. I'm going to change it to this list bullet indent. And I'm just going to change the grouping. So instead of grouping by created time, I can group by any property here, like tags. And then just hide empty groups. And now all of our toggles are going to be each tag. Now, if you want to close all toggles at once, there is a shortcut that's Command Option T, T for toggle. So that's just another way to visualize your notes or retrieve your notes. What you can also do is in each page, of course, in the body of the page, you're going to write out all of your notes. Now, if you do have a file, like a PDF that you're trying to summarize, there is a block called PDF where you can embed PDF into the body of the page. Also, we're going to have a section up here for comments. If you're using this for personal use, I recommend going to the page menu in any page in your database, going to customize page, going to top level page discussions, and just turning that off. This will be turned off for all pages in your database. And all of our properties are at the top of every page, like metadata. And I can rearrange some of these to make it look a little bit neater. I can also hide some of them. So for example, maybe sources and attachments. I can click on source and go to hide property and hide when empty. And the same for attachments. And now that property will be hidden. I can also add an icon or a cover image to each page. And if I want to quickly navigate through each page of my database, there is a next page button up here at the top left-hand corner. And I can just go through each one. I'm just going to go to my archived section here and give newsletter content ideas an icon as well. Okay, so now we're done with the captured database. So let's start with the next page. We're just going to have an empty block here. And I'm going to create a second column by just grabbing this block and sliding it next to capture. I'm just going to go /page again. And I'm going to name this one projects. So we're going to start connecting captured notes to these projects. Come down here and choose table, and then new database again. Now, of course, I can also give this an icon. And just like with captured notes, I'm going to make sure this first database view, go to rename, is going to be active projects. Now, a few different properties we want for projects. Firstly, I'm not going to have the tags property. To delete a property, I'm just going to select the title and go to delete property. I'm going to start with a property that is a checkbox, and it's just going to be a simple done checkbox. We're going to keep this project's database rather straightforward. The next property is going to be a date called due date. And we can also change the date format here if we want to. And then another date property that's going to be called to publish. So this is different from a due date. Maybe you want to launch a newsletter, for example, and the due date may be May 17th, but the date you want to publish is May 18th. So let's make that a project, launch newsletter. The last property is going to be another checkbox for archiving. So this is going to help us archive old projects. And I'm just going to give that an archived icon so that I can make this as minimal looking as possible. We know via that icon what it is doing. Another project could be launch a cookbook Notion template. And we'll just use these two projects as examples. Maybe the due date's the 26th and the publish date is the 31st. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is go to the database menu, go to layout, and just make sure these vertical lines are gone. And what I can also do is go to sort and make sure this is sorted by due date. And again, like we did with capture, we can go to layout and just make sure we're opening these pages in a center peak, and you can go through all these options yourself and customize how you'd like. Now, with most projects, you probably want to break it down into smaller tasks. And that means we're going to go to the database menu and go to this other option we haven't seen yet, which is sub items. Now, by clicking that, you'll see in this preview window, what we can do is create sub items of a parent item. So sub-item is going to be renamed to subtasks, and parent item is going to be project. Let's create that. And now what you'll see are two added properties that are called relations and an invisible toggle next to each entry. If I toggle down, I can now create a sub-item. And for launching a newsletter, maybe a sub-item would be write newsletter content and create newsletter template. So for both of these relations, I do want to hide them by going to the title and hide in view for both. So now we can easily break down these projects into actionable tasks. For this one, add recipe layout and create recipe, maybe categories. You can give these subordinate tasks due dates as well. Now let's say for launching the newsletter, it is finished. All of its subordinate tasks and the project itself. And as a result, I want to archive all of these subtasks and the project itself as well. Just like with the captured database, we're going to create a view just for archived projects. Firstly, for active projects, we're going to create a filter by going to this filter button, and we can go to archive and make sure these are unchecked. I'm going to go to active, duplicate, and rename this to archived. Give it a moon emoji and make sure that filter goes from unchecked to checked. And now we'll see launch newsletter in this section here. And what I can also do as archived projects become more abundant, I can go to group and just make sure this is grouped by maybe due date, date by, month. Again, like what we did in captured database and hide those empty groups. Let's create another database view for a calendar. Call it due dates. We want to see all of our due dates for projects in a calendar view. Maybe go to properties and see that done checkbox. Great. Can sort as well via this button to sort by due date, ascending. We'll see that in a calendar, which is nice. Maybe we can duplicate this and also see a calendar of all the dates to publish projects. To do that, we're going to go to layout and make sure that show calendar by instead of due date is to publish. And that should shift all of the calendar items. Okay. Now let's make some connections. We go back to the dashboard and go to capture. I want to connect maybe how to make a cookbook to a certain project in my projects database. I can actually add properties via any page in a database, and it will create that same property for every page in the database. So let's go in here and go to add a property. And let's add a relation. So relations are advanced properties if you're new to Notion. It's connecting one database to another or one database page to another database page in the same database. Like we did with parent and sub-items with the projects database, that was a relation that was internal. This relation is going to be external. So it's prompting you to pick the database you want to relate to, either to itself, capture, or maybe to projects. So let's select projects. We'll see in the preview window that capture is now going to connect to projects. Maybe we also, by toggling show on projects, want to also connect projects back to the captured database, like a backlink. And this new property in projects could be called from capture. And just add that relation here. Now we have a relation called projects. And if I click through, I'll see all of the projects and tasks we just created. In this case, it's going to be to launch a cookbook Notion template. What I can also do to visualize this a little bit better is click on the menu next to projects, show as, and I have 3 different options. I can just show as a property as is, or as a page section. I'm going to choose page section just to give it its own section down here. And I'm going to go to customize shown properties. And maybe I want to show the due date of this connected project. Okay, so we've captured how to make a cookbook tweet and connected it to a project that we can easily open as its own page. You'll notice we are now in the Launch a Cookbook Notion template project page, and the parent page is the projects database. Speaking of projects, let's also clean up these pages. Maybe I want the done and archived checkboxes at the bottom, due date and to publish at the top. Firstly, I'm going to get rid of this comment section by going to the page menu again and going to customize page. Top level page discussions, and again, we're going to turn that off. So I'm going to click on subtasks, which is an internal relation, and show as page section. I'm going to visualize these subtasks a little bit differently. I'm going to go to customize shown properties, and some things that might be useful is seeing the done checkbox. So we can click through completed subtasks within the project page, maybe a due date if that's relevant. And I can also move these around in different order. What I'm also going to do is from capture that external relation, I'm also going to show as page section below subtasks, or I can bring it up above subtasks. And again, I can visualize what properties I want to see, like maybe type, so I know it's a tweet. And also source might be useful, and attachments. So I can click through that link right from this project page. Okay, great. Launch a cookbook. Let's say that the add recipe layout subtask is completed. If we want to keep track of the progress of each project, I can actually create something called a rollup, which works directly with relations. So let's create a new property here and go down to the rollup type. And I'm going to rename it progress, and we're going to create a progress bar. The first thing I'm going to do is select the relation that I am using. In this case, I want to use subtasks. And I can select the property that I want to look up from the connected subtasks. In this case, because we're creating a progress bar, I want to select done. Go to calculate, and I'm just going to calculate the percent checked. And I'm going to change it to a bar. And I can even change the color of this progress bar, maybe to orange, and then click away. And we'll see that this project is at 50% completion. Let's take a look at how we can organize these captured notes into different areas. So we're going to create another page yet again. I'm going to grab this empty block and again just slide it next to projects. Go to /page and make an areas database. I'm going to go down to more here, and we're actually going to create a gallery and go to new database. So areas, unlike projects, are just areas in your life, actionable areas like learning a new language, that do not have a definitive due date. So again, this could be something like renovating a home or learning a new language. So let's add an icon here. We're going to make this rather simple. I'm going to go to the database menu and go to layout. Now for gallery, you'll see this to-do checkbox and completed to-do. We're actually visualizing the inside of the page. And we can change what we're seeing in this card preview by going to the card preview option and choosing between none, page cover, or page content. I'm going to choose none and go back. Just like with our other databases, I'm going to create a database view here called active and another one for archived. I'm going to go to this page 1 and open this up as a full page to add some properties. Firstly, what I want to do is get rid of this comment section by going to the page menu again, customize page, and top level page discussions off. Delete this created property, don't really need that. And I'm also going to delete tags. So with a clean slate, I'm going to first add a property called status. This will give me a drop-down menu as well, except a status drop-down menu is going to be divided into to-do, in progress, and complete. And we can actually add different options to each one of these. So I'm actually going to click on done here and completed and rename it to completed. And those will be our statuses. So the reason why I'm choosing this status option instead of a done checkbox for areas is because it's ongoing. I just want to have a signal that shows that this ongoing area is in progress. Now completed, we're going to assume means archived. With that in mind, we're going to not utilize the archive checkbox here. What we are going to add is a relation to capture by selecting relation, and I'm going to direct this relation to the capture database. And I'm also going to show in the capture database a property called area. The areas database has a relation called capture to capture, and the capture database now has an area relation to areas. Now let's add that. And what I'm going to do is actually select, rename this to from capture, and in the menu of from capture, I'm going to go to hide property and always hide. So what I'm thinking with this relationship is that there's probably going to be a lot of notes in these areas because they're ongoing. So with that in mind, let's actually rename this area maybe to learn how to speak Spanish. And from capture, let's select tips for learning Spanish as an example of a note. And I'm just going to go to the parent page here, areas, back to that database. And I'm going to create a template for areas by going to this drop-down menu next to new and new template. New area. You'll see your editing inside of a template via this bar up here. Just open this up as a page. And what I want to do is link all of the notes connected to each area in the body of the page as a database that you can sort and filter. So there are two options to visualize relationships, either in the page section, which we've been doing, or with this option. So to create a linked database view, I'm going to go to the body of the page and go /linked. And the first option should be linked view of database. So we're going to add an existing database to this page. And here it's asking what data source do you want to link to? In this case, capture is what we want to link to. Great. I'm going to choose an existing view from capture. Remember, we created an active view, notes view, archived view, tag view, and all, which was that week view. I'm going to choose active. So now we're seeing this almost like a portal. I'm just going to click away. You'll see the capture link to the database. You'll see this little arrow here indicating this is a linked view, like an embed or a portal. I can go ahead and hide this database title. And I am going to make sure that every time I add this template, by going to the page menu here, that it is a full width page, like this. Okay, so what I want to do is for every area, I want to see all of my notes in this style, like I said, so I can search better, I can sort through all of my notes better because there's probably going to be a lot of captured notes. And I think I'm going to remove grouped by month. So I'm going to go to database menu, go to group, and just make sure grouped by is none. So we just have a list of notes in a table. I'm going to make sure this filter, which currently has archive unchecked, I'm going to add another one. I'm going to make sure that the area relation in this note, by clicking area, contains the title of this template. new area, which should be at the very top. Now everything should disappear. And what will happen is when we select a new template, it should automatically connect to whatever page we're in. So I'll show you what I mean. But first, I want to create an archived view. Duplicate active, rename this to archived quickly, change this sun to a moon, and just change this filter from archived unchecked to checked. Again, we're keeping that area relation to new area. And then I'm just going to go back to the area's database, click on Learn How to Speak Spanish, and see what happens. When I select now in the body of the page this new template we just created, new area. Firstly, full width page, and all of our active notes connected to Learn How to Speak Spanish. What we can also do from these area pages, let's say I have a note that I know is going to go to this area. I can just go right to this Learn How to Speak Spanish page and add notes inside of here. And you'll see with each note that the area has now populated the page we're in, Learn How to Speak Spanish. So what I want to do is actually go to Tips for Learning Spanish and open this up. We did create a page section for projects that these notes are connected to. I want to do the same with areas. So I'm just going to click on area, show as page section, and maybe show the status. So this is our notes page for Tips for Learning Spanish. If I go to Capture, we're in the Capture database. And I can see that this is part of the area Learn How to Speak Spanish. I can click through there. And now I can see all of the active and archived notes for this area. Maybe give this an icon. Now that we're in here, I want to add some more properties for areas. The first being, I want to count how many notes I have. So I'm going to use a rollup again. Go down to rollup, and I'm going to call this number captured. And the relation is from capture. Property is going to remain name, and I'm just going to calculate count all. In this case, it should just be 1. And then I'm going to add another property called formula. And what I want to do is create a label. That label is going to be called capture label. And I'm just going to create a string that says blank number of captured notes. And I'm going to visualize this inside of our gallery cards. What a formula does is give you the ability to aggregate or calculate information from your database. So we have properties over here on the right-hand side that we can work with. This is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to say if, and click on this property here, number captured. This is a number. If this is greater than 0, then I want to format. This format is a function. You'll see here, formats its argument as a string. What I want to do is format the number captured as a string plus the string captured notes. Otherwise, if numbered captured isn't greater than 0, just a blank space. Okay, so we have 1 captured note. I'm going to go ahead and hide this rollup. Now if I go to areas and go to the database menu, the first thing I want to do is go to properties and show captured label, and maybe show status as well. And because we're only seeing active areas, I want to make sure the filter is status is not complete. Okay? And now what I want to do is just duplicate active to archived and make sure this is a moon emoji. And this filter instead is status is completed. So from the beginning of the video, I mentioned that a note will only be connected to either a project or an area. That makes it an actionable note. And when we're capturing notes, we want to keep this in mind. We want to make sure we're not just capturing notes for the sake of it, and that it actually has an actionable purpose. Let's go to each one of these and start making connections. So recipe ideas for cookbook might have the project by clicking Add Projects, Launch a Cookbook Notion template. Tips for learning Spanish, the area, of course, is learn how to speak Spanish. In archived, we have this note, newsletter content ideas, which is a file, and I'm just going to add this to project, launch newsletter. We're archiving projects that are completed and areas that are completed. How do we know when to archive notes? So we could just manually, by looking at it, go, I don't really need this right now, it's not actionable, but it may be useful to see if the project that it's attached to is completed or not. In order to visualize that, I'm going to go ahead and create another property here called Project Progress. And we're going to go to rollup. So again, the rollup, call this Project Progress. We're going to choose the relation projects, the property of done, and we're going to calculate the percent checked. And maybe we can create a progress bar here. So if all projects connected to this note are at 100%, we may want to go ahead and click that archived checkbox. And I can, inside of the page, maybe hide this. Okay, so now let's talk about how to capture notes from the web. I have an article here as an example. How to write a newsletter that will help a brand grow from Forbes. And I've downloaded an extension, which I'll link down in the description below, called Save to Notion. So what this extension does is it allows you to add forms that connect to your Notion workspace so that you can easily capture web articles and images and videos into your notes database. In fact, let's create a new form together, add a form, and I'm just going to select the database in my workspace called Capture. Okay, so in this form, what do I want to do whenever I capture an article? Do I just want to bookmark it, or do I also want to extract the content? Now the fields that I also want to manipulate, template isn't really necessary, but we're going to add a new field here for type, another field for projects or areas. So I can select an existing project from my projects database specifically and from areas like learn how to speak Spanish. So this is just a form, and maybe I can add that tags database to add some tags. And then I'm going to save and go back. And now I'm here in this article and I want to capture it. So I'm going to select that form. Maybe I'm going to rename the title here, How to Write a Newsletter. Go to type. This is a web clip and it is connected to the project Launch Newsletter. No area, but it does have the tag newsletter and marketing. And let's save the page. I can open the page in Notion via this button. I'm just going to go back to my sidebar. And you'll see how to write a newsletter and the source. In fact, I may go to source and make sure wrap column is off. I can open this up and it should give me the content of the article in the body of the page. Just going to delete these images and even add an icon. Let's talk about summarizing. So what's really important about capturing notes and web clips is summarizing these articles, because you don't want all of this information in your notebook. This is not useful. What is useful is summarizing this into bullet points. I do recommend reading it all the way through and making your own assertions for summarizing, but AI can still be really useful. So if you do have AI, you can highlight the entire page of content and use the shortcut Command J. And you can then ask AI to generate a summary. So what I like to say is generate a summary with a paragraph and useful bullet points. Remember to highlight key words as bold text. Okay, so let's replace this section. So we do have a summarization up here. It is a bit long, so I could summarize this further. Now, with that long article, we have a pretty good summarization. So I did want to bold keywords, and it doesn't look like that happened. So what I'm going to do is actually highlight these bullet points. And I really like doing this with my summarizations. I'm going to say bold keywords, so it really stands out. Okay, great. This looks better in light mode, but you'll see that all of the keywords in these bullet points are now bold. And I can also turn this into, by either going to the block menu and turn into callout, or I can actually just go into the block itself and go / into callout. I can even change the icon of this callout to maybe an info icon. So that long article now looks a lot easier to digest. Going back to the capture database, you'll notice in project progress now that this how to write a newsletter has a project attached to it that is 100% completed. So now I may look at this and go, okay, do I want to archive this note? It's not currently actionable for a task that I am currently doing anymore. So yeah, I may want to archive that. There may be captured notes that do not connect to a project or an area. This would be a resource. Let's say, for example, that I want to capture this tweet, which is about how to use an AI prompt. This is actually my tweet, but I'm going to use it as an example. And I might want to just save it, but I'm not actually working currently on anything that would utilize it. What you're going to do, again, I'm going to utilize that extension, Save to Notion. And I am using that form we created. I'm just going to change this name, not to the whole tweet text, but just something that's easier to read, like AI prompt idea for Notion database. And I can make sure the type is tweet. And I'm going to skip projects and area and go right to tags and select this Notion tag. Now you'll notice at the bottom here for this extension, which is really cool, you can either clip this as a tweet, none, or a thread. I'm going to choose thread just to show you what that looks like. Okay, great. Let's go back to the captured database, and it should be right here, AI prompt idea for Notion database. And we'll see in these callouts every part of that tweet thread. Great, so now we've captured this. I'm going to give it an icon. Now, because it's not attached to a project or an area, it is considered a resource. So let's go back to the dashboard homepage and create another page here, / page called resources. Let's give this an icon, maybe a light bulb. And this is not going to be a table. This is just going to be an empty page. And I also want to make sure that the page is full width. So I'm going to the page menu and just toggling full width. And I'm going to look for the linked database option in the database menu / linked. That should be the first option. Again, we're creating an embed to an existing database we've created. It will give us a selection to choose from. In this case, we're going to choose capture. And I'm going to choose an existing view by tags. just going to click away really quickly, go to capture, just make sure I had this database title. And that shortcut for collapsing toggles in a page is Command Option T for toggle. Great, so we do need to add a filter here because these are resources. I'm going to make sure they're active, but you could change that. And I'm also going to add a filter here where area relation is empty and the project relation is empty. This should leave us with only one note. That Notion note we just saved. AI prompt idea for Notion database. And that's all we really need to do for that page. And I'm actually going to modify my navigation bar up here. I'm going to create 2 different columns, or actually 3/3 columns. Create 3 columns of blocks. I'm going to create a toggle here that says actions and another one for organize. And the last one's actually going to be /button. And we'll configure this button at the end. Drag and drop capture into actions, and organize, of course, we're organizing what we're capturing into projects, areas, and resources. What we're also doing is viewing all archived projects and notes in a separate page as well. So under organize, I'm actually going to create another block here, /page, called archived. And this is also just going to be an empty page. Maybe add an icon for archive. And we're going to make sure that this page is also full width and /link database view. So in this case, we are viewing archived projects. So I'm going to select the first data source as projects, and then we do already have an existing view called archived with all of the appropriate filters in place. So that's really all we need to do. I'm just going to change the name here to projects and change this icon to a tool so we know it's for projects. Click away. And I'm just going to hide this database title. And because we selected that existing view, the filter will already have archived as checked. And grouped by month and year. Let's create another view for archived areas. So I'm just going to select this plus button again. And now we can actually select another data source, in this case, areas, for this database view, and select an existing view called archived. Again, we already have our filters in place. We don't really need to do anything here. Just rename it to areas and give it a new icon. And of course, I'm going to hide this database title. As well, we're going to view all archived notes. So again, we're going to select a new database view and select capture. And again, we have an existing view called archived. Just rename this to captured notes and change that icon. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard here. And I might even move archived to an action. And the last thing we want to add, of course this is optional, like I said in the beginning, is the sharing option, which is also an action. And I'm going to go /page, again, maybe call this to share. Give this an icon of a rocket ship. And again, this is going to be an empty page and a full width page. So again, /linked view of database. First, I want to see all of the projects. And we do have an existing view called toPublish. So let's select that and maybe change this icon again. And then lastly, we want to view all captured notes. To share, just select active here, captured notes. And I do want to ungroup by created time and just choose none. I can also filter this to make sure we add another filter where the share checkbox is checked. I actually do want to hide this project progress. It's not really necessary in this view. So let's go to capture title here and hide it. And we are done with setting up sort of the system itself. Now let's create a dashboard. This isn't going to be a complicated dashboard, but I just want to show you how you can create a home page for your second brain. First, I'm going to get rid of these instructions here and maybe throw this inside of a page called Video Help. And below our navigation bar, I'm going to create a callout. So / callout. And I'm going to make sure that the color of this callout is default background. And maybe change this icon to an info icon. Now inside of this callout, I want to show all of my active projects and areas. I'm going to call this projects and areas. I'm just going to go enter and tab in to get inside of this box. I can just go / link to create a linked view of a database, or I can actually go directly to the link of the database. So projects is one that I want to link. Go to its menu, copy its link, and then go down to where I want to view a linked database view and paste. And it will actually give me an option to create a linked view of that database. In this case, I want to see all active projects, so I'm going to select active and just leave it at that. And hide this database title. And I am going to actually rename this to projects so I know which one it is. And the next one is going to be areas. So we're going to add a new database view here and just make sure this source is areas. Change the name to areas and then change this icon, of course. Go to layout, make sure it's a gallery. And in card preview, I'm just going to change to none again. Go back and make sure the property I'm seeing is the captured label and the status. So that does look really nice in the front of my homepage where I can see all of my active ongoing areas and the number of captured notes in them. Go back and I can sort again by status. And that's all I really need here. I'm going to hide that database title. And here in areas, of course, I can also add new areas from here. This is going to be the extent of my home page. You can just throw this video help down here. Give some space between our navigation bar. And let's configure a button. Now, buttons in Notion are rather new. I do have a whole video on it if you want to check that out. And this button is going to add a new note and call it new note or add note. You can even give it an icon as well. And we're going to add the first step here. We're going to add page 2, select a database, in this case, capture. And the name of this new note will be new note title. Edit another property. We could in type make sure the type of this new note is note. Now the next step is after creating this new page, I want to open it up and start writing in the note. So I'm going to open page, and I'm going to open this new page that I added from step 1. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to open this page either in side peek, center peek, or full page. In this case, center peek is fine, and press done. This is our finished second brain template. Let's take a look at what happens when I select this button. Takes me right to a new note page. I can maybe create a note for template ideas, give it a tag Notion and brainstorming, and just get right to work. And I can even add projects, or maybe create a new project, like launch a Notion shop. Add new down here, add new, launch a Notion shop in projects. And get started here. And when I'm done writing those notes, I can maybe go to launch a new Notion shop, open this up as a page, and now configure my new project I created. And of course, in the From Capture section, I can see my template ideas note here. And that's the extent of it. You'll also, of course, see our new project here in the home page, which we can also add new projects from. You can toggle down and add new tasks for this project to break it down further. And of course, you'll see this progress bar go up and down as well. Like I said, full template and follow along page are down in the description below. Let's just go right into the outro. I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is definitely a longer video. I wanted it to serve as a video you can come back to over time. Let me know down below if you do utilize the second brain system or if you plan to in the future. And I will see you guys the rest of the week on Twitter and next time with a new video. I'll see you then.